This is Basketball Infinite. Make sure to like, subscribe, ring that bell for notifications. Alright, so I want to talk about one of the top prospects in the 2021 NBA Draft. He's the top big man pretty unanimously, and his name is Evan Mobley. So I saw this on Reddit. Can someone pitch me in on Mobley? I'll read this out. Just to say, I don't think he's a bum or anything. I do see the fluidity mixed with the size, so that's rare. I see how it's enticing, but I can't quite put together an argument for how he's this generational prospect like some are saying. Players like Cat, Joel, Embiid, and Ayton, they could bully their way to shots at the rim. I can't see Mobley as that type. So then people point to his perimeter game, which defensively I think is overrated. I don't see him as a Giannis type guy who can stop guards from passing him, and offensively he's got a promising handle and is a good passing prospect for a big, but the shooting isn't there. I don't mean to sound so negative, he's still my top big, but for him to get to All-NBA status, I feel like a lot needs to come together. I want to see the light, someone show me it please. And as you can see here, by NBADraftRoom.com, he's currently projected third to the Orlando Magic, and he's compared to somewhat between LaMarcus Aldridge and Chris Bosh. Alright, let's get into it. Some of his draft notes from NBA Draft Room. He has length and size to go along with excellent coordination. He has an advanced offensive game, and he has a nice shooting stroke. We'll get into that. It's got room for improvement, but like the previous guy said, I don't think his shooting form isn't completely there. I mean, it's there, it just needs to improve. He can handle in the open floor, he can make plays in transition, he's an above the rim player, quick reflexes, good defensive instincts, good rebounder, high IQ. He's shown a rapid rise in improvement, and in terms of his room for improvement, he's still very skinny and lacks strength and power. I definitely agree with that, as we'll see some of his highlights in a little bit and more along those lines. And I'm going to strongly disagree with this last point. He doesn't have a frame that is likely to add a ton of weight and will probably always be more of a finesse player than a true power player. Okay, first of all, he's 7'1". Second of all, he's shown the ability to score in the post, albeit against college defenders. And third of all, we're not Nostradamus. We don't know if he's going to put on weight or not. As his comparisons are, built like a taller Chris Bosh and somewhat LaMarcus Aldridge, but with the potential for better attributes, which is pretty good considering Aldridge was like a 6 or 7 time All-Star. Let's look at this comparison with Chris Bosh. It's been mentioned a good amount of times. So yeah, Evan Mobley, 16'8", 2. They didn't have per back then, but we're going to see what Bosh averaged. 2, 15 and 9. Somewhat similar, although Bosh's shooting touch probably was a little more advanced, and I'd probably give Bosh the defensive edge too. So honestly, I'd probably say Bosh was a little bit of a better prospect coming out, but not by too much. Let's look at some of his highlights, Evan Mobley. And you're going to see he finishes a lot on the inside, but I will say that is the biggest thing he's going to have to work on, which is just putting on weight. Because other than that, this is a 7'1" guy who can run the floor, he can finish, he's got a okay shooting touch. I mean, he shot 30% from 3, the college 3, so that's going to have to improve going into the league. But the other thing I've noticed is the IQ he has. He had a 4.0 GPA in high school, and you can tell that his IQ for his age, especially as a 7'1" player, is definitely way above average. And you see this defensive ability here, although this is obviously against a mid-major team and Drake. So yeah, the biggest couple things I've noticed is, yes, he needs to put on a little bit of weight, and I do think it's going to be an adjustment going into the league because he's playing against college centers in all of these games. Whereas in the NBA, especially as a top 3 pick, especially as a guy who's going to be a franchise centerpiece more than likely, he's going to be going up against absolute beast every night like Embiid, Jokic, Towns, Ayton, all of the above. So, yeah, he's going to have to put on weight. But look at this dunk. This was probably his play of the year right here in the Sweet 16. That was just a nasty dunk against a guy who has more bulk than him. So that shows you, this dunk right here shows the potential that he could reach. And keep in mind, he was the first player ever to sweep every Pac-12 basketball individual award ever. He was a finalist for National Player of the Year. Now let's look at what this longtime NBA scout told the Undefeated. He said, or she, very seldom do you see a player at his size with his agility and mobility, coupled with hand skills, his shooting mechanics, and so forth are above and beyond most prospects. And then this scout went further, saying, however, he lacks strength. You have to prepare him for the potential of him getting bulkier and stronger, which I think he will. And the other concern is willingness to take games over, and he certainly did that in the Pac-12 semifinals. He needs to grow in that regard. In some respects, he has to be a little nastier, but his upside is incredible due to his ability to run, catch, and shoot at 7 feet tall, which all of this sort of contradicts what NBA Draft Room said, because they're saying that he doesn't have the ability to gain strength, and this longtime NBA scout is saying he is and can, and I am too. I think he can. Will he? I don't know. But this was my overall response to the original post that we put at the beginning of this video, and I'll read through it. I think he has a low floor, combined with he's the only 7-footer who's a guaranteed first-round pick. I do have questions on whether he will be elite. But I also think his floor is basically a top 100 overall player in the league. His playmaking, we didn't really emphasize it much in this video, but I watched a lot of other highlights, and I think that entering the league, he is going to be an above-average playmaker at the center position from day one. He only averaged over like 2 assists a game, but I've seen the IQ and the ability to be that playmaking big at the NBA level. As I mentioned before, he has a 4.0 GPA, and he should be a plus defender from day one. Now, whether he gets to all-star level depends on how much more his offensive game develops, where he is drafted, and he needs to put on at least 10 pounds, but he's not far off. And at absolute worst, in his prime, I think he's a better offensive Miles Turner. That's my prediction. At absolute worst. That's his floor, and barring major injury. And yeah, he's a guaranteed top 5 pick. I don't really see anyone calling him a generational center either, like mentioned in the original post we posted at the beginning of this video. I do think he has the skill set to be one if he develops properly. Someone also made a comparison in this thread, which was Chris Boucher, who has a similar build. He's actually shorter, I think, but he's a fringe top 100 player, and it's like getting Chris Boucher except with 6 extra years to develop. Not to mention, I think Mobley's a better playmaker and probably a better defender than Boucher of the Raptors right now at the NBA level. So, let's conclude. Do I think he is a generational talent off the bat? I'm not going that far. But with the lack of big men that are projected in the top 10, that's one factor. But that's not the factor that's going to get him to a generational level, obviously. The other factors are he has a low floor. I think, as mentioned, at absolute worst, he's a better offensive Miles Turner. Or if it's really, really, really bad, I think he's Chris Boucher. At absolute worst. And Chris Boucher is a borderline top 100 player this year. So that's what I'm saying. I think that that's his floor. Now, in terms of the upside of where he could grow, he's 7'1", he's fast, he's agile, he can make plays, he's a defensive player, he's the only Pac-12 player in history to sweep every individual award. He had a 4.0 GPA in high school, his basketball IQ's through the roof, and there's a lot to like. And looking at what the longtime NBA scout said, the main concern is really he needs to put on weight, and that's really it. Like, he needs to put on weight. And people have differing opinions on whether he can do that or not. Even if he does not, I still think he's a borderline top 100 player. So, that's at absolute worst. But my opinion is I think he will. And now we talk about whether he can be an All-NBA or an All-Star level player. That really, really depends on the situation he's drafted to. There's a lot of different scenarios that could happen there. Like, for example, I think the Thunder would be a good fit. You've got SGA. Moses Brown is good, but Mobley's better than him right now. So, I think SGA and Mobley would be a nice core. We could talk about Houston, where he could learn under John Wall. You've got Christian Wood there, and that would be a situation where maybe the pressure isn't as much on him from day one. NBA draft room had him going to the Magic, who I'd be a little concerned about that one because of how they developed Mo Bamba, but they also don't have Vucevic there. But they do have another young center in Wendell Carter Jr. Yeah, I'm not sure that would be the greatest fit, honestly. That's my whole point. Like, it depends where he goes, but he does have the skill set to develop to that All-NBA level player, but it's just at absolute worst. He's a top 100 player, which isn't a bad thing, but it just depends. It really depends. That's really the conclusion. It depends where he's drafted, and it depends if he can put on weight, and if we had to give a percentage on that, I think there's a 75 to 80% chance he's going to be able to. And yeah, I think my final prediction is he's probably a top 50 player in the league at least. Not day one, but within a few years, within the right development, and adding that he can put on weight. I think he's going to be a borderline all-star player, and depending on the situation he is drafted in, he could be an all-star maybe quicker than we all imagine if all of the stars align. This is Basketball Infinite. I hope you liked this video. If you want to see more, let me know. Have a great day.